O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is therefore one with every other. Let's observe silence for a couple of minutes. Welcome again. So, as today is 1st October, so today is Madam Annie Besant's birthday, and her dedication towards theosophy and her work. Because of that, considering it, we are every year we are celebrating her birthday, and also today, the 1st October, is considered as our theosophical year. So our theosophical year starts today. So I'll introduce Madam Annie Besant. She was born on 1st October in the year of 1847. And she was an educationist, philanthropist, women's rights activist, a writer, and a great orator. And moreover, she was a great theosophist. She was the second international president of Theosophical Society in the year of 1907 till 1933, and she was known as the Diamond Soul. So I'll not talk much. So today our speaker is he will tell so many things about Dr. Annie Besant. So Brother Mathurnath is from Chennai, and he has been a member of the MTF since 2018 and has been a keen reader of the theosophical literature and aspires to spread the literature to those who seek. He has compiled the books of the etheric double, astral body, mental body, causal body, and the solar system in order to make the reader acclimatize to the actual literature. At the end of the talk, he always recommends to read the book in order to understand the truth deeply and to concretize the theosophical teachings in a tangible way. He aspires to spread the teachings by practicing diligently amongst the youth, the young minds of the nation. So, let's welcome Brother Mathurnath. Brother, over to you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the first talk in the section, and on such a nice occasion where somebody has contributed a lot for the TS, and without her, we are all not here. So, in such an occasion of her birth anniversary, of such a Diamond Soul's anniversary, it is indeed a pleasure that my doors have been opened to give a talk. And it's been so fortunate enough that the topic of today is also been on qualifications for discipleship. So just giving you a overall introduction. So Annie Besant has given a lot of talks, and she had actually written a lot of commentaries for the work of HPB. In one of the talks is The Path of Discipleship. So that has also come out to us in the form of a book. So that's The Path of the Discipleship. In that, there are 4 chapters. So the first steps, it has 4 chapters. The first chapter is the first steps. The second one is the qualifications of the discipleship. Then the third one is about the other initiation steps. And the fourth one is how a life of a disciple conducts by itself. So these have been the combinations. Of all these four, in fact, each topic can be spoken elaborately. And there used to be workshops, a whole day of workshops on that. Uh, so I have taken one portion, which is on qualifications of discipleship. Uh, Connected with this book is also Masters and the Path. So we need to read the path of discipleship and also Masters and the Path together to understand what does it mean to be in terms of a master and a disciple. Because in the TS literature, we have a lot of stages. You have somebody called neophyte, you have somebody called probationer, and then you have disciple, and then you have a master, and then in the meantime you also have initiates. So you have adepts, you have ashika initiates, you have a nirmanakaya initiates, etc., etc., etc. So each one is a topic by itself, which we can go on and on and on. But at the end of the day, since the life of a theosophist is always about learning and then synthesizing that with our daily lives, so I'm just touching on the qualifications of a disciple. Now, what are the levels of discipleship? Kindly read through the material, and if we have any sort of questions, please park it at the end of the day, and then we will go through one by one, and then we can arrive at a concise understanding of what we are talking about it here. So my talk is mostly about a presentation, so I would like your permission to share my screen and let me know once the screen is visible. So is my slide visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Great. So we, as I said, we are talking about the qualifications of discipleship, which is from the path of discipleship of Mary Vincent. Now, the qualifications for discipleship has three major components. Number one, to be eligible for discipleship, you need to have a control of mind. Number two, you need to do meditation. And number three, there must be a building of character. Now, why is it essential and why is it being insisted for being a disciple? Why is it so special for a disciple that he has to undergo all these three, which normally not everybody need to undergo? Well, the answer lies in the question itself, because he is trying his level best to just go above who we call as our masses or who we call as our brothers, or in the theosophical literature, we call them as humanity. So we are trying our level best to just go one step further, to travel one step above, and again start guiding and take all our brethren along with us. And from there, again, we will be going to the next step. And again, we will be taking all our brothers with us, brothers and sisters with us. Again, we'll go to the next step. And again, we will carry all of us with us. So there is always two travels involved. One, you as a disciple of your master, and you advance yourself in terms of understanding, in terms of how you conduct your daily life, and at the same time, how you be an instrument of service. These are three things which is very important. So that is one part of an individual life. After that, you start helping in terms of the instrument of service. Now you guide others also to go in that path. So those who have already taken a very, very high standard of advancement and are now helping others to come into the path, those who are guiders or those who are leaders, we call them as masters. And those who are aspiring and they're still not completely on that journey, but still somewhere higher above, but not reached that stage. So they are somewhere here. So they are called as disciples. So they have dual responsibility. Responsibility number one is to be connected with the master and also to progress the humanity who are lying below them or who are unequal to their standards. So this is what Annie Besant calls like, why do we need qualifications for discipleship? Okay, so now coming, what are the qualifications do we need? So the first one is controlling of the mind. Now, this is very tricky, isn't it? You have two concepts. One is control and other one is the mind. Now, what do you mean by this? Second, what is the mind which is being controlled? Well, this is something which we need to understand before we go into control. But along with this is also a very important question. Who controls it? So first, let us understand what we call as mind. Now, when I say I am talking right now, or when you say I am listening to Mathu's lecture, now what is happening here? There is a waking consciousness which we refer to as I. But not only that, when you sleep, you have a consciousness of dreaming. And when you're completely into very, very deep moments of stillness and oneness, or you have a very deep sleep, which now the modern science calls it as alpha sleep, or which the yogic culture calls it as the turiya state of existence, etc., etc. In that deep moment of stillness, you have a set of consciousness. That is what we refer to I. But on a normal parlance, when she means by controlling of the mind here we are talking about the waking consciousness. But remember that we are not trying to control only the waking consciousness. We are, in fact, as a theosophist and as an esotericist, we are trying to control our mind, which is operating even in the consciousness of the deep sleep, which is your swapna, and then even in the sushupti, and not only in the jagrati. And even in turiya, we are trying to control it. But in turiya, again, there are levels. So the deepest state of turiya, there is no mind at all. So there is no control needed. But till then, even in the sushupti, there is one set of control which you will be needing. Now, how do you ask me, Mathur, where is that in sushupti that you need to control your mind? Well, you have to read something called as the causal body and the ego of A.E. Powell. He has elaborated few techniques there as well. So coming back to this topic. So what I mean by mind here is basically the waking consciousness, the jagrati, but it also implies that you have a swapna and you have a sushupti. Now, what do you mean by controlling means? Well, the controlling has two components again. You have to control a lower nature, and then you also need to control your higher nature. Now, what do you mean by the lower nature? Well, suppose when we talk about devotion, what happens to us? There is a strong attraction which we develop to someone, or to some god, or to some devata. Now, what's happening to you is all your emotions, all your passions are all directed towards that particular entity to which you have a devotion. But remember that beyond this passion and emotion, there is a mind, there is a mental thought process which is causing these passions and emotions to be directed there. Meaning that you are not doing it just because you're doing it. You're thinking about it. You give a reason to it. And finally, you make a judgment to it. So the theosophy stresses you that, yes, you have your passion, you have your emotion, but this has to be accompanied with will, with reasoning power, and judgment. And how consciously you do these three things along with your passions and emotions is where your spiritual growth in the path of discipleship is marked upon. And you choose the path by reason and judgment and not at the mercy of circumstances. So that doesn't mean that, okay, so we normally say, right, this thing came to me, and we will be emotionally overwhelmed or surprised or even sometimes with gratitude, but all of them are on the emotional level. Now, we are not here to run them with those tides of time. So that's why esotericism and theosophy is a bit brutal in your nature. Yes, you are having a highest level of happy feeling when you got your car, but we ask you only one question. What is the reason? And why do you need the car? If for your reason it is not sufficing, then it means that you have just wasted. I mean, be it your car or be it your love life or be it anything for that matter. So that's pretty brutal. I will not say it's merciless because that's not a good word. It's even more stronger than that because it comes from the field of uh, thought process and willpower. So we here are like a captain. So that means that how we live a life is as a captain who rides the ship, who knows where is what, or who knows who can handle this shows of time, the tides of time. Not like a person who is actually being washed with the tides of time. So getting yourself with a compulsive action and behavior is what is called as lower nature. So here, as to be qualified for a discipleship, you need to overcome that through will, reasoning power, and judgment. Okay. The second one is about there is a sense of individuality within you. Now, as you do this, you will also recognize that there are two forms within. One form is completely altruistic person, a very service-oriented person, a very spiritual being. And there is also one guy who's aspiring to have some material comforts. Now, this guy who's aspiring for material comforts is called as the individuality in our theosophy. Okay. Now, how do you call this as individuality? Why do you call this as individuality? Now, this one comes out of the willpower which you have been developing it over incarnations. Yes, you heard me right. It's incarnations. Okay. So this Maturnath today, or this Mita today, or this Dr. Sushma today, or this Mr. Pradeep today, everybody is a sum and substance of accumulation of all that memory they have had over several years, several births together. Now, each behavior is different. The way I behave is different from even my Siamese twins behaves, right? How does that happen? Here is where there is something called as individuality, which is being developed. Now, if you go to the herd of animals and you just give them one circumstance, you will see that all of them behave in the same way. Suppose like you are in the cow shed, you just open the gates, you just see like one cow goes and all the cows follow. One sheep goes and all the sheep follow. That means that you can actually judge beforehand how they would act. But the beauty of this individuality, especially with humans, is you don't know how they would act. And that is what is more intrinsic, and that is what is even more interesting for the masters when they deal with the disciples. But nevertheless, this individuality which you have will have to be guided with a direction which comes from within. That comes from a higher being. And that higher being is what we call as ego. So don't take ego as a negative term. In Theosophy, we don't call this ego as a negative element at all. We just call him as a much more bigger person who knows all your story end to end. And he is the one who contacts with the master, gets all that inputs from the master and gives it to you. And from that power of direction from within, you are able to control your lower nature. Now coming up to the higher nature. Now, what do you mean by a higher nature? Well, you have an emotion. Now, this emotion, which deals with your daily life, which deals with your daily survival, is called as the lower nature. My family, my job, my earnings, my profession, my education, to a certain extent, even my individual practices. I sit my eyes closed, I fold my hands, my legs, and I do a lot of yoga and asanas, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana. All of these are my lower nature because this deals with my daily life. But beyond this, there is some section of my mind which opens up for a creative power of thought. Now I start wondering, okay, every day I'm doing something, but why am I doing this? What is making me do all of this? When that sort of a question comes in, you slightly start reading something more. And that's when theosophical literature is actually giving you the path. Now we open up your mind for some bigger truth or bigger uh, level of guidance. So what happens? The first stage, what do? You get into some sort of philosophy. There is some knowledge of philosophy which you get. Then you ask, okay, I'm thinking something like this. What generates the thought? So then you look at it, because all of us here have undergone that. Everybody of us who's listening to the lecture, speaking, who's also undergone all the tumults of life, some point or the other, we all have a question like, what is generating this thought which I have over something? That's when you try to know that deep inside that there is a mind that produces them. And beyond the mind, you have someone who's producing it. As somebody who's outside the universe, creating the entire universe, so is outside the thought, you have an entity who's creating the thought. This Kapatanataka Sutradhari is the concept which the Puranas talk about. It's not talking about one avatar, it's actually talking about you and me. So now you realize that a creative power which is beyond the mind and using the mind as its instrument and is separable from it. So now when you get into that sphere, your self-control of a higher nature becomes possible. Okay, but here it doesn't stop. Now, yes, you have grown, you have become mentally stronger to understand that I exist beyond my mind. And beyond the mind is where I operate on, I create, and mind is just an instrument of my creation. But the next question is, because I move with these people, I now start understanding my thoughts have come from minds of other men, and so will my thoughts impact others too. It's as simple as this. So it all happens in our lives, right? So why do you think that you have to be rich? Why do you think you have to be successful? Because you have thoughts. If you ask me, okay, for this reason, Mathur, that I want to be rich, where did that reason come from? That has come from some other person who has given us this thought. So you will now start understanding that not only you are individual in terms of your behavior, in terms of your reasoning, in terms of your will, and thereby in terms of your judgment, but equally, you're also getting some of the insights from the minds of your co-travelers. Now, that is how a master and a discipleship relationship is developed. You try to work out what is there in the minds of your master because you have aligned your minds to that thought. So knowingly or unknowingly, we in the lower nature have aligned our minds to the thoughts which we call as egregores, which is basically the collective thought forms. Okay. So now you will understand that just like with my thought, you can actually make others work for you. So what happens? There is a bigger responsibility now you have to handle. So for this reason, you actually require a control of mind. So thereby, how is a life? When we mean by control of mind, what do we try to imply? That we ought to be doing is to be thinking deliberately and thinking with the purpose behind the thought to accomplish that which we have determined to do. So thereby the control of the mind is being done by somebody who's a bigger spiritual entity to whom the mind is the thought, and he controls the lower nature and the higher nature. And in your lower nature, you have the individuality being developed. And now your action has to be aligned with that deliberate thought, which will have a purposeful thinking. So that should be the takeaway when we mean by control of the mind. Clear? So why? For gaining discipleship, the thoughts gain added power and individuality grows stronger, mightier, and every thought has more energy, more vitality to impact others and influence outer world. Well, this is something like this. So as you have developed your thought patterns and made them more stronger through the control of the mind, now what happens to it? Well, Powell has written an entire 5 set of literatures on how it impacts. So your aura starts becoming bigger, brighter, and stronger and sharper. So does your chakras become very stronger. And because of that, your bodies also gain strength. Now, when this happens, it is easier for you to impact others naturally, even without your knowledge. So the power of thought now comes from the teaching of the Guru. Because of all these factors which is stronger and which is able to create an impact to the others, now that you have the teaching from the Guru. So that's why they normally say, right, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And what does he do? He now gives you the thought pattern. And with your individuality grown stronger, everything is now being able to impact others and influence outer world. And because of this reason, now the teacher appears, the teaching is given to you. So this is the word she has actually used in her speech. I'm just quoting her. Out of that invisible, which is the one from which all proceeds, appears as it were a faint cloud becoming visible, a faint mist condensing, which separates itself from the invisible vapor around it, and gradually condenses more and more till it becomes the individual drop that we recognize as a unit out of that which is all comes, the separated and distant, one indeed in its nature with the all, the same in its essence, but separated by its conditions and so individualized out of the whole. Basically, what are we talking about is that from the macroscopic view of things, still each one of us are like tiny specks of individualities who are like small dots of light when seen from a bigger scheme of cosmos. And the individual soul of man is such an individualization from the one self, and it grows and grows by experience. It grows and increases and develops as it is reborn life after life and time after time, hundreds of times into the world. And what we call the mind is just a little outpouring of this individual into the world of matter. So that's why I kept on telling that who we are is actually an accumulation of things. So now, how do you do this constant practice of mind control? Well, it is a constant practice. So remember that. Okay. So the Bhagavad Gita is very clear, right? It says Abhyasam Karmanam Kritsna, right? So you have to do it constantly. So what it is every day, just spend few minutes, 15 to 20 minutes maximum. Take one subject, any subject of your choice, anything, theosophy or non-theosophy, or even your day-to-day economics or even share markets, anything. Read on it every day for a few minutes and bring back the mind to the topic once it drifts off. Again, think consecutively. That's the word. Consecutively, clearly, and definitely about it. When I mean consecutively, you should also be thinking what happens because of this. Say, suppose I talk about share price. So what happens after that? So that's also a logical flow which you need to have. Now, when you have created one thought, and then when you have made a logic to it, and then when you have seen the impacts and the cause of it, now what has happened is it's easy for the energies to flow through. And when you're trying to materialize the same plan in the physical planes, it becomes much more easier. So that's a secret of manifestation. So she's just put it very clearly. So as you do so, what would happen to you is you would move on to the next level, which is called as meditation. Now, what is this? This is simple. What is meditation? Well, in the modern days, meditation is an overstretched word. You have to concentrate, you say you're meditating. You're focused, you say you're meditating. You're being aware of something, you say you're meditating. You're daydreaming, you say you're meditating. But actually, what does in theosophy we call as meditation is the deliberate and formal training of mind in concentration and thought fixation. That means that with this control of mind, when I have consecutively thought about it and brought back to the subject for a few minutes, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix it. And now I'm going to make a formal training and deliberately I'm going to do it. When I mean deliberate, it means it can even take me years and years to get it done. But that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to make the training mandatory that it becomes becomes a part of my body and mind computation. Okay. So what happens is the meditation, finally, when done every day, you become one with what you think. So we all hear about these, right? That we have masters who walk the talk. So that sort of a bond is established. That sort of an alignment is established when you do the meditation. So here, what we are trying to do is a mental activity. Okay. And then we will align it with the way you feel and the way you act every day. So that is why for a disciple, meditation must be done every day. Okay. So the request is try spending at least 20 minutes every day on meditations. But in that process, you can also do something more, because when we are stepping out of our day-to-day individual minds, you can reflect upon humanity and grow towards its perfect ideal. So you can just say, okay, what can I do for people? And then, proceed in that direction. Yeah. Again, quoting, and so in the outer world of man, you may offer the flowers of duty in a life of constant activities, of daily work. You may offer these flowers with the body and with the mind, fulfilling to the utmost your duty in the outer world, but you yourself will be fixed ever in meditation and in worship, because you are formally training your mind in concentration and thought fixation. Once learn to separate your higher consciousness from your lower, yourself from your mind, and you will gradually acquire the power of carrying on mental activities without losing the real I in them. Now, from that waking consciousness I, now you are in a state of I, which is basically the self. The mind working perfectly at its appropriate duties, while the self remains at a loftier height. You will never leave the inner sanctuary, however much the outer life is busy in the world of men. In this way, the man is preparing himself for discipleship. So, what we call as somebody who's working all the projects, making a lot of transformation in human lives, and helping millions and millions of people through many projects and many schemes. Basically, what we're trying to say is what the government is doing. Okay, I mean, on a democratic front. But what is actually being done are all is just that we are preparing for discipleship. So even if you have governed a whole nation, still you're just preparing yourself for discipleship. So that's why, one of the greatest histories we have in humanity, the Chola dynasty. So Rajaraja Soran was still a disciple to his guru, whose name we do not know. And he was the one who actually built the greatest Tanjore temple, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site now. And his guru stated that, yes, you built such a temple of great grandeur, which covers and which has housed more than 3,000, 4,000 people who just every day were, conducting their daily activities in the temple. And he said, now you are just eligible, but you're still not my disciple. So what happens? When this way of discipleship is developed, you land up yourself in having certain transformations within your character. Now, how does this happen? Okay, your thoughts, the thoughts have your thought forms, your thought forms have a mind, and then you make habits, and with that habits which you conduct over several years, it becomes your character. So character is basically, therefore, the intellectual side of meditation, and it is developed over incarnations. So, like what I said, the mind is developed over accumulations of memories of the past incarnations. So, therefore, from now on, what you need to develop in terms of your meditation or in terms of your characteristic, you need to start working on it right now. So you need to have purity, you need to have honesty, you need to have compassion. Well, you have to start working on it right now. Okay, so this should be done with your intellectual side first, and then carry it on as a regular practice. And thereby, what happens is there is a purity which comes because you transform yourselves, right? So there is a purity which comes. And because of this purity, there is much more clearer perception of things. Okay, remember, being clear about something and being right and wrong about something are two different things. Okay, theosophy doesn't distinguish between what is right and what is wrong. Let's make it very clear. We do not call that this is right or this is wrong. We just say what is needed is being done for the situation. Then this is what it is all about. Do you have a purpose? Do you have a reason? Do you have a judgment that if it is correct or wrong, or what is needed for the situation? It's not even correct or wrong. What is needed for the situation? That is it. We say that more and more you're able to enhance it for your daily life. That means you are pure, you're honest. And if you're able to also guide people on these terms of clarity, in our business terms, we always call this as capitalization of clarity. If you're able to do that, then that results in compassion. But remember, compassion means the ability to help and relieve others from their suffering. And there is a clause, without you being affected. When I mean you being affected, you should not suffer when you're trying to elevate someone from suffering. Okay, that's a misnomer which we have been quoted in few of our religions, where we say that, okay, even I undergo suffering, it's okay, but my fellow brethren shouldn't. No, in theosophy, that is not the case. We say that neither you need to suffer, nor I need to suffer. And with that, if you're able to bring somebody out of their suffering, then that is called as compassion. But if you are also getting yourself uh, under a problem or under a mess because of that, sorry, that's not called compassion. The masters don't take that as compassion. Okay, so be very clear about it. This is something which might be against like what you have been thinking, but this is what theosophy says. Okay, so now because of these three qualities, purity, honesty, and compassion, now what happens? There is a nobility of strong men being developed. Now, when this happens, you start becoming much more balanced. And because of that more balanced, you have a self-restraint towards something which is unwholesome, which you feel is not okay for me. And there is peace and there is fearlessness in all of this. So therefore, what do? The thing which she says, which is very, very famous in Annie Besant's life, she used to always say that if somebody was very confused and they didn't know how to go proceed further, she would just look at them without a blink of an eye for like few minutes. She'll just look into their eyes and then she will say, use your conscience, use your consciousness. You will know what to do. That's it. She had not given any teachings or she had not given any advice. She used to look into their eyes and just say, use your conscience. I still remember one of the incident in her life. So there was this High Court judge called Justice Subramania Iyer, who was having a trial in the court. And there was a case where it was a murder. It was an accused of a murder. The one who was accused, everybody knows that he has committed the murder, but the evidence against him wasn't not much stronger, thereby which he couldn't be convicted legally, or they couldn't make a judgment in that accused name. So they couldn't convict him in the legal terms. But his mind, his inner consciousness was not allowing that to happen. So he went to Annie Besant and he explained the situation that when I look at the family who's suffering because this guy murdered that crucial person, and there is no stronger evidence, I do not want, my inner feeling is not allowing me to do so. What shall I do? And Annie Besant just looked into his eyes and she said, well, use your conscience. And she just went inside and she rested. And he just pondered and reflected for some time. And then he came back and he resigned his post. And in his resignation letter, he stated that we have a very flawed legal system in the British India, that the judgments of who is right or wrong, or the judgments of conviction and eviction, is given on the basis of evidence. Well, truth and judgments have to be passed based on the conditions of realities and truth and not based on evidence. So therefore, this is not the right way of delivering justice. So I resigned from my post. And he actually resigned from the post. And when he did this, and it doesn't actually like the way he took his life. And later on, the same British government, they liked the way he thought about it. And they again made him the vice chancellor of the Madras University. So if you just check in the vice chancellor's list of Madras University during the British India, he was Justice Subramania Iyer was one amongst them. So what are we talking here about? Develop a character of that level. Be noble. It doesn't mind whether you have a colonial rule or you don't have freedom of execution, which you think you don't have. But just think about them. Be noble wherever you can. Be balanced. If there is some sort of an imbalance being created, you have all rights to ask of it and think of all of them and practice. So finally, what is my end result? The teacher finds the student and manifests himself to the soul. The light shining within brings the teacher to the student. Can we mute? Can we mute someone who's not in mute? Thank you. The teacher is watching, is waiting, is desiring to find you. Okay, so this actually brings me to another thought process. So when somebody asked Ramanuja that, suppose say when I go for the path of moksha and the God doesn't leave me, or the aspirant falls down the path, what happens to him? Ramanuja smilingly asked that, will you as an aspirant fall down, or will the person whom you're aspiring to reach as your end will let you down? So he asked this question. So that means that there is no fall. So we have all been thinking, right? In religions, they have been saying that tomorrow you don't know which birth you would be taking, right? No, that's not the truth. You will be born as human being. Let's make that very clear. Okay, there is no fall. Because the one who's your master does not want you to fall. And never that happens. Okay, so he is waiting. He's desiring to find you, desiring to teach you that you have the power to draw him to you, that only you can let him come. He may knock at the door of your heart, but you must cry out the word that bids him enter. And if you would follow the path I have traced for you this morning, if step by step you would thus learn control of mind, meditation, building of character, there you would have spoken the threefold word, which makes it possible for the teacher to reveal himself. When that word is breathed out in silence of the soul, which is basically the initiation she's talking about, then the master appears before it and the feet of the guru is found. This is exactly what we call as the qualifications of the discipleship. And at the end, what happens is the initiation. So this is where I end up my talk and my presentation. So I'm open to the panel for discussions and questions. Over to you, Smitaji.
Thank you, brother. It was a very nice and calm and soothing talk, and with very nicely presented. And, thank you so much. So I think we should start.
Thank you, great presentation, Ramnathji. Thank you very much.
So I think we should start the discussion. If anybody wants to ask anything to Brother Mathrnath, or anybody wants to say something, so you all are welcome. And the it's open. We are open for discussion now. I think Shinde sir wants to say something. Brother Mathurnath is waiting for you people to
Yeah.
ask him something.
Yeah, ask me something for which even I can smile more bigger. Or is it just like, I have to tell you guys, like, look into your eyes and then use your conscience. Any questions from the YouTube?
Mathurnath, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Very good topic you selected for the 1st October. And you have explained very nicely the importance of qualifications required for the discipleship. Disciple is one who lives the teaching. And Dr. Annie Besant is the one disciple who lived the teaching.
Yeah.
So really we express our sense of gratitude to Dr. Annie Besant on the 1st October. Both Annie Besant and tomorrow is the 2nd October.
Yeah.
Both these days are very important because great souls are there who are born to regenerate India. And they came here and developed this quality in all of us. And they made us actually, we can say, junior disciples. Really, we must express our sense of gratitude to those. And you explained the qualifications of a disciple. What I can say in these days, that that quality is not found in many of us. But both Annie Besant and Mahatma Gandhi were believers in simple living, simplicity. That is one of the qualifications. Gandhiji was only on dhoti, represented the country's poverty, and it gained him a lot of popularity. So simplicity is divinity. And both Annie Besant and Mahatma Gandhi, they were believers in Bhagavad Gita. Annie Besant, translated Bhagavad Gita in English.
Yeah.
So for Gandhiji, Bhagavad Gita was a spiritual reference book in his daily life. So both of them fought against the caste system in India. Gandhiji hated untouchability. And he said, I think we are committing a great sin. We know well Gandhiji's 7 sins. But this untouchability is a great sin. And their education to treat them as equals is really essential, and they work for that. So both of them, we must express our sense of gratitude. Gandhiji worked to break down the caste system. Annie Besant worked to reform the caste system. See, this is the difference again. And both of them worked on some social customs like dowry, sati, even pardha, child widows, child marriages, etc. So this day, I am not telling anything about your lecture. I am just telling, remembering these two great souls and the qualifications. We are remembering their qualification, and with these words, we are paying homage to them. Mathurnath, you read very well, explain very well, and really that is helpful to everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you to all, and also to all listeners. Thank you.
Smita Pragya Patra.
Ah,
Thank you, sir. And anybody else wants to say something? Or any questions for Brother Mathurnath? Fine then. So I think we will close the session with the closing prayer. Thank you, brother, again. And thank you everyone for joining.
And thank you, Smitaji. You are our techie girl for us. So for all techie things, when we are all handicapped, you actually support us every time. Thank
No,
you,
no,
sir.
actually this time Pradeep Uncle is doing it.
thank you,
Everything.
Smita. Thank you, Smita.
Thank you, Pradeep
Thank
ji,
you,
for
thank
giving
you,
me
sir.
this
Thank
opportunity.
you, Mathrunathan.
Thank you.
Okay, let's close the session with the closing prayer. Om Asato ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukhavag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you. With this, we are closing today's session. And thank you everyone again. And good night.